The last album of the night is Lucinda Williams, Car Wheels on a Gravel Road. In the opening montage, you heard Concrete and Barbed Wire, and now you're going to hear Joy.
I don't want you anymore, 'cause you took my joy. I don't want you anymore. You took my joy. You took my joy. I want it back. You took my joy. I want it back. I'm gonna go to West Memphis and look for my joy.
Okay, Matt, what are the stats?
All right, Car Wheels on a Gravel Road by Lucinda Williams comes in at number 130 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 11 in 1998, number 745 of all time. It is Lucinda Williams' highest-rated album on Best Ever Albums. It also made Rolling Stone's list, coming in at number 98, so cracking the top 100 there. And Lucinda Williams ranked number 448 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums.
All right, this album came out June 30th, 1998. We last discussed her on Season 3, Episode 27, on her self-titled third album from 1988. This is her fifth album. She has 15 studio albums, with her most recent coming out in 2023. I believe that album was just coming out after we talked about that episode, so that's how long ago we talked about her.
She needs another one. She's due for another one, right?
Yeah. She was born in Lake Charles, Louisiana on January 26, 1953, so that's maybe a reference to the Lake Charles in this album. She also lived in different parts of Texas, Mississippi, and then moved to Nashville. Genres are Americana, all country, and folk. She talked about, I found an interesting Pitchfork article that she talked about some influences that she had. I think this was during COVID. And she said Reverend Pearlie Brown, which is the first blues record she was ever given, the Beatles, Buffalo Springfield, Van Morrison, Pretenders, Audio Slave, and Sade. And so what was interesting about the article, and something I never thought about, was she talked about influences from a songwriting perspective, and that makes so much sense. But it's not something I ever really think about, is like being influenced. I always think of being influenced like audio with the sound of the artist, but I guess obviously you can be influenced by how people write songs and words they use and stuff too. So that was kind of an epiphany this week, listening to this album. Similar artists, Iris DeMent, Steve Earle, who appears on this album, Roseanne Cash, Willie Nelson, among others. Little Honey, her album reached number 9 on the Billboard 200 in 2008. And some facts about this album, specifically like the production. Her previous album was Sweet Old World on Chameleon Records, which ended up folding. So she switched to Rick Rubin's American Recordings label after that, which is what this album started out on. And this album has, it's funny you said earlier, Matt, taking a long time for recording, because this album took 3 years to come out. And the initial recording sessions for this started in February or March of 95, and she was unhappy with the vocals and decided to start the entire album over from scratch. And the producer at the time said it was 90% done when she made that decision. So then she started getting this kind of perfectionist label and critique to her music, or to her production, and taking a long time or being slow or whatever. And some of that is due to being probably sexism, because journalists at the time were even saying, well, other male artists who take a long time don't get the same kind of flack that she was getting. But so then Steve Earle and Ray Kennedy came on to help produce the album, and the previous producer, this all-time name, Gurf Morlix.
Yeah, Gurf Morlix. Yes, I know that name. Yes.
He stepped down due to resentments about kind of what's happening with the production. And then in the summer of 96, she started recording again. And on this album, that was the first time she recorded songs live with a backing band, as opposed to recording each instrument and vocal individually. So that kind of flavors how you might hear the album, especially in comparison to other previous albums. Earl had to leave production to finish his tour that he was on, but most of the album was finished by that time. And then Williams took it to LA to finish it, and then to Nashville to mix. And this album was done by the summer of 97. Well, how did it get to summer of 98? Well, it was delayed further because Rick Rubin, who owned the record label she was on, wanted to switch distribution from Warner Brothers to Sony Music, and then there was problems with that, so that eventually left Lucinda Williams without a record label for this album. So then her manager did some wheeling and dealing, and Rubin sold the masters to another label, and then Mercury Records put it out. So after all this, it was almost 3 years, and fans were growing impatient, and blamed the lengthy recording process on her perfectionism. But despite all that, at the end of '98, this album was on named on many of the year's best albums and critics lists, and is considered, like you said, Matt, one of her best albums, if not her best, and is considered like kind of a highlight of the Americana genre. And so it has all these accolades despite all the time it took to make it. So I think I heard this album from you, Matt. I think you had this and I borrowed it and burned it or something. That was kind of the first time
Could be.
I had it back in grad school. So let's start. Who should we start with? Let's go to Matt and talk about it.
So the first time I ever heard of this record or Lucinda Williams, it's kind of this interesting period. I know I mentioned before when I went abroad in '98, and so when I was overseas in Ireland, I did not like new music. Like I got 3 channels. I wasn't listening to the radio. I brought like 12 CDs with me, and that's like, and a couple of tapes, and that's all that I was listening to is like, just whatever. So, but I remember hearing from different people like about certain records that were like really good, or not blowing up necessarily, because I don't think that any of these were huge sellers, but people, but I heard a number of people mention this album, Lucinda Williams. I'm trying to think. The other ones that came into mind, just an interesting point, was that first Billy Bragg and Wilco album, Mermaid Avenue, where they collaborated for all the Woody Guthrie lyrics, as well as REM's Up. My brother was like super into that one, so that might be the first REM album that we've come across that we're not covering. But so that was the first time I heard of that. But I was like, this album in particular, I was like, who the hell is Lucinda? At least I knew who Wilco was and REM, but I had no idea who Lucinda Williams was. And so it wasn't until I didn't get this till later. Let's see, this was released June of '98. Yeah, so I probably didn't. I wasn't listening to this probably till the spring or summer of '99. And what a freaking album! I haven't listened to this in so long, but like it's just. This album is like from top to bottom is just stellar songwriting, stellar production, stellar singing, stellar just great. It's like it's a great mix of everything. It's got some wonderful ballads on it. It's got some more like blues, like honky tonk rock. It's got full blown country. It's got pop. It's just the production here. I actually didn't know that Steve Earle, or if I did know that Steve Earle co-produced this, I certainly had forgotten about it because it certainly wasn't at the top of my mind. But this is just such this sound like it's not something that I liked always. I probably didn't really start liking this till like I don't know, midway through college or so. But it's definitely the genre. I think this falls under Mattcore, as John has said before. This is kind of just stuff that like I can eat up when it's done really well. This is one of my favorite types of music. It's just an easy go-to for me, just to like, whether it's something I want something pop or I want something a little dirtier and rock. If there's something I want a ballad to, just really good songwriting. There's just tons of stuff in this Americana, alt country genre that just really does it for me. And this is one of the best. Like I don't think you're going to get much better than this. If somebody were to say like, what's the ultimate, give me an album that kind of really defines that genre. It very well might be this, right? Like I could certainly look at maybe Anodyne by Uncle Tupelo, or, God, I really do love El Corazon by Steve Earle as well, which I think we all like that record. But yep. I don't know. There's something about this album. There's something about her voice, I think, is probably part of it. It's interesting that she said she didn't like her vocals initially, which I'm kind of curious as to what was missing, because it's just she's got a great voice for this, right? You can hear that southern drawl, that twang. You can hear kind of the pain. You can hear the longing. All that stuff that kind of makes country music. Country music is certainly here, but this is the country music that I wish was more popular, that I wish more people appreciated, because these artists are just really good at what they do, and they just they never got the sales that like the Garth Brooks and the Shania Twains of the world and stuff. But to me, this is so much better than that. Like this is, initially I think when I first heard slide guitars or fiddles and stuff like that, I was automatically, oh, that's country, and so it took me a little while to kind of understand that it goes in different directions, right? It's not all in this lane. There's some really good stuff out there, and this is certainly that. So oddly enough, I don't know a ton of other Lucinda Williams albums. It's not like I became a convert after this came out and I started getting all her stuff, but man, this could be like a greatest hits album, right? Like if she has a greatest hits album, there's probably like of the 13 songs on, probably 9 are on that album, because it's just so this is just really strong from start to finish. So highly, highly recommend this. This is an all-timer for me. Big thumbs up.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this album too. I'm not as effusive as you are, Matt. I'll be honest with you. I enjoyed this album. It's not like the Hosannas, right? Like at the level that you're at. Doesn't mean you're wrong, but in terms of like the genre, right? I know it's a real appealing genre for you. I compare it kind of to like, you like the Specials album, right? I'm like, oh, this is an all-timer. And you're like, I like this, right? But this genre, I don't know if they're going to be an all-timer. I feel a little bit the same way, right? In terms of this as music. There's some, the number one thing that I like about Lucinda Williams is I like her songwriting. I think that she's got really clever songs. Songs like Drunken Angel was a sort of a really touching song. In its own way, the way it sounded, and a lot of imagery, like all alt country is, right? A lot of like broad, sweeping imagery, which when done, it goes both ways, right? And like I think she does it very well, but it can also be a little cliche at times because it does strike a little bit like you stole my heart, like the prairie, woods, and it can be a little like that, right? And she stays away from like the obvious cliches. There's a nostalgia to this music as well, that taps into, it's very personal sounding to me, while not necessarily being about one specific thing.
I would
be
agree.
the way that you get what it's in that sense. And so Car Wheels on a Gravel Road just sounds like an experience you could have, but you're not sure exactly which one. And you're not 1,000% sure which one Lucinda Williams had, because it doesn't really get into like the specifics. I mean, there's a lot of lines like, pull the curtains back and look outside. Somebody somewhere, I don't know. Come on now, child, we're going to go for a ride. And it's kind of like, I can put myself into this narrative, right? But like, what exactly is the narrative, So, and I think all that traces back to like the Bob Dylan, like, feels personal without actually being personal way of like writing lyrics to some degree. But yeah, the music on this is, I think, what we would call alt country, right? There definitely is less traditional like country sounds, like just overt country sounds, like the self-titled was that we covered earlier. That one could have been played on Nashville country radio pretty comfortably. I feel like this one could be played on country radio, but it doesn't fit as neatly in what country music was in 1998 in the way that the original Lucinda Williams album fits. And in that way, it's exactly like the Steve Earle origin we saw, because we covered albums from both of these artists pretty much at the exact same time, right? And the first Steve Earle album we covered, I think it was called Guitar Town, right? Mm-hmm. That one was being played on country radio and sounded like it could be. And then the one we did later, El Corazon, right? You're like, oh, I don't know how this one, would get on country radio. And I feel a little bit about this one as well. This felt as much like alt rock as it felt like country music for sure. Whereas I had no doubt that the first album we listened to was country music. But this one breezes by. It's a really enjoyable album. It doesn't really lose quality as the album goes on. In fact, some of the songs that I enjoy are later in the album. Like I really like Still I Long for Your Kiss. It's a really good Torch song and I really think that's like her best lane, like writing Torch songs. I've always enjoyed her Torch.
That's one of two covers, actually, John.
Yeah, fair enough. But it's like she's singing it as a Torch song, right? So
Got it.
you get what I'm saying? Like it's kind of like a Dusty Springfield, right? Like some of her stuff's original, some's a cover, but at the same time, like I would say the same about her. Like her best lane is a Torch song, and so to some degree, she kind of always owns the song. When she sings it, she puts her spin on it. But yeah, you're right though, Matt. Like if I'm going to talk about the songwriting and stuff, so yes, she's right out of that Americana songbook tradition. It is funny to hear how at times, if you closed your eyes, this does sound a little bit like Sheryl Crow at times too. And I was like, wow, I'm surprised. Like I wouldn't put those two together, but like as I listen to this, I'm like, wow, that there's times where I could like hear Sheryl Crow singing this song or Lucinda Williams singing Sheryl Crow, and that would not have been something I would have thought of before this. But overall, enjoyable album, thumbs up for me.
Yeah, I would probably say, I think maybe some of because you're right, this is not as country as her first record. I almost feel like in some ways the most country, the strongest country element to her is her voice. You know, that twang, you know, the way that her voice comes across is definitely like you're getting that comes across in every song pretty much, right? Well, there's not always slide guitar, right? Or like a full blown country type vibe. So that's kind of where I get most of the vibe from, is her voice.
I think that takes us to Josh.
Josh, yep.
Right? So.
Yes. Oh, I was muted. Sorry. I was agreeing with you. Like she also has like an imperfect voice too. It's kind of not gravelly, but it's a little strained at times. You can like, I don't know, it feels like weathered in a way. And like,
yes.
Unlike Sheryl Crow, who I think has kind of a more traditional, like pretty voice, like it seems like Lucinda Williams has like some miles on her with the way she sings and stuff.
But
I think
I agree with that. I also think that John makes a point there. You're right. There's definitely a Sheryl Crow vibe in some of this stuff as well.
Yeah,
so
I'm sure Sheryl Crow's influenced by her since she's been around for so long. The other thing, like you guys said that like there's not a lot of country on here. I think I don't know. In some ways, it's like infused with country, just like from the way that she has story songs on this, like the Lake Charles song, or the way she like kind of name checks different places that she's been to, or you know she references like Vicksburg at one point, or like going places. And I feel like throughout either the way she lyrically like tells the stories or just kind of the emotion that comes through, I feel like that's very country in a lot of ways. I like how I like this album as well. It's a really enjoyable listen. I kind of like how it seems to dabble in different genres, or at least kind of fuse them all together. I like I get a lot of like Louisiana feel from it with the like accordion and stuff. It's almost like veers into like Zydeco at times, although not as like up tempo, so I feel like she's pulling from that too. I like kind of the folksy feelings that she has from it, and it just kind of has this overall lived in feeling that I really like. And like John said, she's got a way with words, which is why I like Concrete and Barbed Wire so much as a song that I picked, and throughout there's other examples of that. But she also can easily do kind of like the rock thing too. Like I think Too Cool to Be Forgotten is more of like a rock song, and then like Joy is like more like kind of stomp your feet type of rock song. And the
Can't Let Go is kind of a rock, although that's the other cover, but that's kind of a good rock song too. Yeah,
so she's able to do that as well, and I think she really, there's a lot of musicians on the personnel list if you look, and like slide guitar and dobro and like all different types of instruments throughout. Emmylou Harris also makes an appearance, just in backing vocals on one song. So I feel like this is a true, a true essence of Lucinda Williams in a lot of ways, and I think that's why I respond to it so much. And it's just I agree with you, Matt. I think it is like kind of one of the best examples of the Americana genre in terms of kind of highlighting all the different things that make up Americana, but also just kind of what the best representation, like sonically, as to what it is, and accessibility as well. I think it's very easy to listen to this album, so it's a thumbs up for me. I think there's a lot you can get out of this album listening to it.
Yeah, it's got the consistency, and I think you're right, Josh. I think there's some, the variety here of just having something that could be more pop, or could be more rock, or more blues, or more country. I think that's what really stood out to me. I think this time around was, kind of that variety. Different instrumentation, the harmonica, right? In Drunken Angel was great, or the Concrete and Barbed Wire is a waltz, right? In the 3-tempo, so 3 beats per measure thing. So and also looks like, I didn't know this either, Roy Baton. E Street Band's own Roy Baton is a co-producer of this record too, so I found that interesting. But yeah, I mean, I get it's probably not, again, it's not a groundbreaking album, but it highlights so many elements of these different of this genre, right? And it does it really well consistently, and just one great song after another. So that's why I love it.
And I think too, with the live band recording while she's singing, you can kind of like pick up on that. Like there is kind of like a live feel, or like in the room feeling when you listen to the album. You can hear, especially on headphones, you can like hear imperfections and like different like kind of background things.